Good morning, or depending where you are in the world, we would say good afternoon. This is Sónar+D CCCB. We have just started this morning, and we are going on now with immersive technology. We are in a moment where there is a paradigm shift of what we know, like we have relationships with screens and with squares, screens like this one, or screens like the one that you are staring at right now, whether it's your phone, your tablet, or your computer or TV set. We are moving into a world that's three-dimensional and to a world where we interact naturally with what we have around us. We are going to explore VR, and we are going to explore immersive along with these people that I'm going to introduce you right now, starting with, and first of all, I think that I should make a disclaimer. This session is going to be multilingual because our first guest is Xavi Tribó. He is a creative technologist from Barcelona, and he's working with something called Hyperreality. And he is going to tell us about it, but in Spanish. I hope that you don't mind. Later on, we will welcome the rest of the guests who will make their presentations in English. So now, with further ado, sense esperar més, els que esteu aquí al públic, benvinguts. És bonic veure-us. Us presento el Xavi Tribó de Glassworks. Fem-li un aplaudiment.
Hola, gracias Antonia por invitarnos a esta sesión tan especial. Y he venido a contaros los últimos meses una experiencia que ha marcado un poco una diferencia para nosotros. Antes de nada, os situamos, somos Glassworks. Glassworks es un estudio creativo que nos dedicamos a ayudar a contar historias a través de los efectos visuales, y últimamente dirigimos también historias a través de los efectos digitales, y quizá más en mi figura. Los últimos años a mí me gusta explicar cosas a través de líneas de código. Montamos una especie de laboratorio de prototipado de diferentes elementos tecnológicos, lo que llamamos tecnologías inmersivas, para contar, en vez de efectos visuales, contar a través de líneas de código y tecnología, ayudar a contar historias. Y así nace Xavi's Lab. Hemos venido a contar nuestra experiencia este último año de hiperrealidad. De hecho, toda la hiperrealidad pivota realmente a través de la tecnología de realidad virtual. Para ello os tengo que contar que desde los inicios de esta tecnología, yo tuve la oportunidad de empezar a testearla en los 90, a través de Sega. Recuerdo algunas experiencias en el apartado de videojuegos, o también Nintendo. Era algo que francamente en nuestra concepción del lab, de experiencias inmersivas y colaborativas, era algo que realmente no encajaba, no nos seducía. En las primeras experiencias de Sónar tuve la oportunidad de presentar alguna experiencia, y ahí hubo una cosa que tengo que desvelar, que creo que en la primera o la segunda edición había una cola pero enorme, y delante de la cola había un laptop con un prototipo de las Oculus, las DKU, que creo que algunos recordaréis, y me interesó porque detrás de ello había una pieza que se llama Close de un desarrollador que se llama James George, que está trabajando en código abierto, y me enganchó la idea. Probamos esta experiencia y vimos que realmente la realidad virtual tenía mucho campo de trabajar en el storytelling. El storytelling tal como lo entendemos ahora. Sí que hasta ese momento teníamos unas limitaciones. Al final tenemos la percepción de lo que vemos y de lo que oímos, pero realmente pasó otro punto importante, que es que hay un chico que se llama John Carmack, que bueno, quizá muchos los conocéis porque es el fundador de Software, creador de Doom y otros blockbusters de videojuegos. entró dentro de la cúpula de creación de los prototipos de Oculus, marcando que lo importante para que esta tecnología sea realmente inmersiva es que todo tenía que pasar en solo 11 milisegundos. Yo creo que fue ese el punto donde marcó esa transición, donde esas jornadas de tecnología VR al final se quedarían y se han quedado para contar historias muy chulas que tenéis la oportunidad ahora. Empezamos a prototipar, hicimos algunos prototipos con sensores Leap Motion, no sé si lo conocéis, pero es un pequeño sensor que pones las manos y te detecta la estructura ósea, lo colocábamos delante de las gafas y cuando hacías esta acción pues creaba la ilusión que realmente tenías las manos aquí delante, incluso podías hacer acciones de motricidad fina, ¿no? A partir de aquí, explosión de tecnologías emergentes en pocos años y cosas como la vista y el oído, donde realmente a través de motores de videojuegos ya conseguíamos esos 11 milisegundos, esos 90 frames por segundo, teníamos una calidad bastante o realmente buena para contar o explicar a través de texturas visuales, algoritmos de 3D como Ambisonics que se integraban tanto, por ejemplo, en Unity, en motores como Unity y Unreal. Y empezamos a hacer pruebas también para qué pasaba con el tacto, qué pasaba con cosas tan obvias en un entorno real como la comunicación corporal. El hecho de levantar una mano y decir hola sin decir ni una palabra, ¿no? Y aquí empezó nuestro crecimiento de prototipos, de hacer pruebas, y hace 2 años, en el 2019 fue un punto importante porque nos llevó para hacer un pitch, después un concurso y para un proyecto comercial para la marca Audi. Audi justo sacaba el coche eléctrico, Electrón, que es todo tecnología. Tenía, como ya sabéis, los coches tienen muchos algoritmos ahora que gestionan muchos de los controles, pero ahora habíamos atacado al motor, a la batería, con lo cual podríamos decir que ahora es completamente algorítmico, ¿no? Eso casaba bastante y en el pliego del concurso ponía entre paréntesis hiperrealidad. Pasó algo como mágico y es que fui a proponer los prototipos, intenté contar una posible historia y fue la primera vez que nos dejaron 4 meses para hacer I+D, para investigar. Y lo que hicimos es ir para esos prototipos, esas ideas, y nos focalizamos en el storytelling, en la comunicación corporal. He intentado ahora recoger a través del archivo audiovisual un poco que entendáis cuál ha sido este recorrido y cómo hemos llegado a, creemos, una buena propuesta de interacción de hiperrealidad. No teníamos suficiente espacio, alquilamos una nave industrial, necesitamos 5 metros de altura, un espacio bastante grande. Os he puesto este esquema para que veáis que al final necesitamos un truss con muchas cámaras que nos analizaban nuestros movimientos, propusimos varios sensores. Y aquí empezó un poco a hacer los diferentes tests. En los mundos virtuales la comunicación es bastante posicional. Los triggers, la activación de los diferentes eventos depende del joystick, de las teclas, de algunas cosas gestuales. Pero ¿qué pasaría si colocáramos esta tecnología que utilizamos en Visual Effects? Supongo que habéis visto mogollón de making of con las capturas de movimiento, con mogollón de puntos. Pues hay una tecnología que se llama tecnología activa, que con unas cajitas, unos sensores, simplemente poniendo un par en las manos, otros en los pies y otro en el casco, a través de 5 o 6 sensores, podrías tener la capacidad de analizar ese comportamiento de comunicación y hacer cosas como tan chulas como estáis viendo aquí, que hacer este gesto y que realmente en un espacio virtual una comunidad o un grupo de personas podían tener un lenguaje corporal. Y claro, esta es la parte de sensores, pero la parte de visual, ¿cómo nos la imaginamos? ¿Cómo resolvemos? Porque realmente era un proyecto comercial, teníamos solo 40 segundos para equipar de esos sensores, con lo cual no podíamos poner 30, solo podíamos poner, en este caso, 6. Y contactamos a una empresa afincada en Inglaterra, se llama Ikinema, que nos pasó un solver, que es una fórmula matemática, que lo que hace es, a través de esos simples 6 sensores, 6 puntos de detección, es capaz de reconstruir una posa humana. Estáis viendo aquí el vídeo de un compañero nuestro. Fijaros que tiene sensores en las manos, sensores en los pies, un sensor en la cabeza y otro en la mochila. Fijaros que el solver era capaz de resolver la posición del codo. No tenemos ninguna información del brazo hasta la mochila. Esa decisión fue una pieza del puzzle como muy importante para realmente resolver o llegar a esa proyección de nuestro o vuestros avatares virtuales en la experiencia. Otro punto que yo estaba como muy obsesionado, y es que en un mundo virtual tienes diferentes elementos. ¿Qué pasaría si una caja de cartón, que la estás viendo con una textura, una iluminación con un motor de render súper guapo, tienes una sensación de que está allí, pero acercas, pones la mano encima y tienes sensación y tacto de que realmente es un cartón, incluso los golpecitos, ¿no? Llegamos a poner sensores en estas cajas para tener esa posición accurate, ¿no? ¿O qué pasaría si esa caja de cartón sensorizada la arrastramos? Aquí creo que fue un punto donde dijimos, vamos bien, este proyecto creo que aportaremos, aparte de la comunicación corporal, aportaremos una conexión con los diferentes elementos físicos. Aquí os he puesto 2 de los hitos. Tuvimos esta investigación tiene muchos puntos de desarrollo. Yo os he puesto uno que para mí, un par que son como los importantes, y creo que fueron el punto diferencial de otras experiencias que están en paralelo haciendo ofertas de hiperrealidad. Imaginaos que llegáis a un espacio diáfano, aparece un banco virtual, te acercas a ese banco, pones la mano y haces el acto de sentarte. Algo tan simple como sentarte en un banco, en un entorno virtual, pues realmente no es trivial. Incluso aquí vemos a Clara cómo intenta tocar los corners, ¿no? Y realmente están ahí. Y otra vez, la sensación del material, ¿no? Eso fue un punto súper chulo, un hype muy chulo durante el desarrollo. Y quizá el punto que estamos como bastante satisfechos es, dentro de los props, de los elementos que teníamos físicos, ¿qué pasaría si tienes un elemento dinámico que a lo mejor está parado en ese momento y vas y te acercas y lo tocas y le transmites esa energía y empieza a moverse? Si ese dinamismo interactúa contigo, bueno, el hecho de crear la fusión entre la realidad y la virtualidad es genial. Al final decidimos que el mejor ejemplo, y aquí estáis viendo, es crear un péndulo, donde tirabas el péndulo y qué pasaría si cuando vuelve al aire eres capaz de cogerlo y está exactamente en la posición que tú esperas que esté. Este es un punto del I+D que logramos súper exitoso, estamos súper contentos, e incluso lo utilizamos durante la experiencia. A partir de aquí, pues nos liamos a pensar un poco cómo los elementos de este espacio VR, donde tenemos que mezclar realidad con virtualidad, cómo esconder los sensores, cómo hacer materiales que, si yo te tiro el péndulo y va a tu cara, pues que no te haga daño, hacer elementos donde dejas total libertad al usuario a cogerlo desde el punto que sea, no hacer un constraint a un punto donde sabes que tiene que escogerlo allí, sino que, como en el mundo real, tienes con toda libertad, puedes cogerlo. O incluso hacer una piedra que sea pesada realmente y que tenga una textura, como una especie de gema, donde la textura y la luz que tú estás viendo a través de tus gafas realmente te lo transmite esa sensación del sentido del tacto. Y en storytelling creo que también hicimos un buen push. Aquí, a través de la agencia de DB, tenía muy claro los hitos de una marca como Audi. Nos plantearon una historia muy de espacio-tiempo, para mí inicialmente de los años 90, muy de los típicos blockbusters, las películas. Y al principio no lo veía, pero al final estamos en un proyecto comercial donde tenían que pasar muchas personas al día. Al final creo recordar que pasaron 1.200 personas en el total de la experiencia, y tenía que ser una experiencia donde al inicio tenéis que entrar como muy rápido. Entonces, el hecho de tener un espacio físico cerrado y empezar a crear escenarios donde ibas, venías, hacías vuelos, era algo que ayudaba a conectar muy rápido. En escasos minutos estabas metido en la historia. Y un punto que nos marcó diferencial es que teníamos 40 minutos. 40 minutos para hacer esto, con lo cual tuvimos que hacer algo como muy natural, donde las transiciones del real al virtual, desde el inicio que entras a la experiencia, tenía que ser algo donde no te agobiaras, donde no tuvieras que ir a una sala de brief y ponerte las gafas, sino que la propia experiencia te indicara cómo tenías que entrar. Una parte del storytelling bastante chula fue un robotijo que de hecho era un actor, de hecho era como una especie de game master que te indicaba dónde tenías que dirigirte, llevaba el ritmo. Aquí os pongo diferentes vídeos que tienen el punto de vista del robot, para que veáis esos diálogos de ese game master, de ese robot donde interactuaba y cómo llevaba a todos los players, a todos los usuarios, los diferentes puntos de la experiencia. Y finalmente os pongo el caso es un video case muy orientado a una visión global de la experiencia, pero creo que describo muy bien cómo fue.
En el tiempo a bordo de una nave espacial o descubrir cómo nos moveremos en el futuro.
Una inmersión corporal total.
Y esta experiencia terminó 4 días antes de empezar la pandemia. Y desde el día, ese viernes fatídico de pandemia, de confinarnos hasta el día de hoy, hemos estado haciendo bastante I+D, porque nosotros no terminamos aquí, creemos que estamos arrancando por fin ese concepto de metaverse, y hay unos elementos como la persistencia y otros elementos que creo que nos van a fortalecer ese concepto de hiperrealitat.
Molt bé, moltes gràcies, Xavi Tribó. Jo vaig tenir la sort de viure aquesta experiència. Enviem-li un aplaudiment i continuem. We have already connected Etxe Tancal i Carmen Aguilar i Wedge. They are known as Hyphen Labs. They are a young studio based in London, and they work also with immersive environments, with interactivity, and they do everything with a feminist perspective. Let's see if we can connect with them. They are presenting a talk called Listening to the Echoes of the Fluid Mind. Carmen, Eche, good morning and welcome.
Hi, benvinguts.
Benvinguts.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Antonio. We're super bummed we can't be there physically, but hopefully next year.
Okay, so it's all yours. The stage, the audience, everything. Go for it.
Thank you. So we want to give a bit of background information on us. I'm Eje and this is Carmen, and we met in Barcelona in a very experimental architecture school where we were exposed to a lot of different technologies like computational and data-driven and interaction design, robotics, and digital fabrication. And after that, we wanted to continue exploring complex ideas through creating spaces, objects, experiments, experiences, and systems. And in 2014, we decided to open our own studio, which would then allow us to explore translation between different realities. We come from different backgrounds. I'm an architect, Carmen's an engineer. We come from different countries. We speak different languages, so we like playing with this translation. And we also like experimenting in different mediums, collaborating a lot of different people, scientists, artists, architects, engineers. And through this creating, materializing, building, it has been a very empowering experience for us because as women at the margins of technology, we want to use storytelling to explore the boundaries of our imagination so that we can share and connect with the others. And we're always trying to take a playful and loving approach. And today we wanted to share with you 3 of our projects that we think that have a different entry point to immersion.
So the first one that we're going to speak about, it's called Neurospeculative Afrofeminism. This was a project that we created in 2016 and 2017 with our collaborators Ashley Bacchus-Clark and Nitzan Bartov. And this was our first foray into VR. We called it NSAF because it was not safe as fuck. And it was responding to ideas of privacy, surveillance, and representation of Black women in new media. So NSAF, when we were first building it, we were working with Black women, and I'm a Latina, Eje is Turkish, and we find that often our stories and our bodies aren't represented in digital spaces. So we were searching for avatars that would be representative of like tech and science, and we could only find really stereotypical images and avatars. So we realized, okay, we've got to create our own. And this was our first time making VR, so we did all of the motion capture ourselves. We did all of the audio ourselves. And so we were completely immersed in the experience as well. And when you're doing VR, you have to do a lot of other VR pieces to understand what works, what doesn't work, what do you like. So we found that we were always put into a black box and then put on a headset, and we were expected to be immersed in a new space. So since we come from like spatial design and architecture, we wanted to do something that allowed us to cross that threshold before we entered into the VR experience. So we set up a neurocosmetology lab, pulling from kind of immersive theater where you would be engaged with a neurocosmetologist, but instead of coming to a hair salon, you were coming to a brain salon. And we all know how to engage in a salon. So the barrier to entry was quite low. And because we weren't having you walk around the space, it was very comfortable. You were familiar, and we were able to gain users' trust in the space. So all they needed to do was look around. They knew they weren't going to hit anything. They knew they weren't going to engage in something they weren't expecting. So we primed them by bringing them into the physical hair salon and then layered that on top of a digital hair salon. And so we mirrored this virtual space. And then what we did was we used the idea of a mirror. which we hadn't really seen in a lot of the demos that we'd been doing, because we wanted to look at embodiment. So we tied our VR headset to the character's head, and each person was able to like move around. They took the avatar's pose and they began to say, this is me as this character, and this is my story. And so the next chapter in our VR experience, we first grounded them in the hair salon, and then the character is sucked into the mirror and they lose their body, and we start to play with the feeling of flight and where they get to explore their limitless imagination. And this is where we gave them the opportunity to actually meet these kind of 3 new virtual digital manifestations of multidimensional Black women. One that was focused on like youth and internet culture, the Bibliodataist, one that was on nature and the protection of ancient culture, which was the Wata Camino Raiza, and then one that represents the future and transhumanism and collective consciousness, which is the Techno-Africanum culturist. And in the space, we also wanted to talk about the issues that are still very relevant today, which is the lack of representation in the beauty industry, in surveillance. There's a lot of bias. So we created these objects that people could engage with physically, and then we used these elements in the VR experience so that, but they were rescaled, remixed, but there was a continuity between the physical and the digital space.
So our next project looks at immersion from a bit of an analog perspective. In this one, the idea was to give people a chance to tunnel into their device's mind so that they can examine their relationships with the digital platforms and the powers behind the technology. So in 2019, we were selected as lead artists at Tate Modern's Tate Exchange. And every year they give a theme, and we were given the theme of power. And because we like interrogating technology a lot, we thought that the most powerful thing in our daily lives right now is the phone. It's also an incredibly amazing tool for immersion. No? When you pick it up, you are completely immersed in it, but it can also break your physical experiences immersion once again when you pick it up. So the project is called Higher Resolution because in the digital world right now, we think that resolution is to see clearly, is to have knowledge, is to have all the experiences. So we wanted to demystify the blurry backhand technologies that we use every day. So this is the 5th floor of Tate Modern. It's a place where it's not a white cube gallery anymore. You are an active participant in the space. You're not just consuming art there. You have to be an active agent there. And we took over this space for 2 weeks with our collaborator, Caroline Sanders. We invited over 40 people, our friends, our artists, academics, community organizers, and nonprofit organizations like Mozilla, so that we can investigate with the public our relationship with technology. We were really inspired by Dogville and how the floor plan was used with the minimal details to encourage the mental extrusions of their physicality. In these spaces, we wanted to reflect a gradients of privacy in the digital spaces we occupy. So we realized that we act very differently in physical and public spaces depending on the different level of privacy, but we're not that careful when we are existing in the digital spaces. So we wanted to create that parallel so that people can understand that privacy gradient and be aware of their behavior. So we programmed these spaces so that they can hold events that match their level of privacy. We started with the town hall, and it's kind of like Twitter. You don't have to sign in to engage with the content. It's kind of like a public square for speaking out loud, deliberately, and you can be heard. It's kind of like the social network where your thoughts can spread virally as well. The second space was the park bench. It's kind of like a semi-public space. It's a thoroughfare. It's kind of like Facebook. You need to sign in to access the content, but once you're in, you can engage with a lot of different things. And in this place, we curated a couple of different contents, like video pieces from our artist friends, and we did a lot of physical activities there. The third space was the living room. It's kind of like a semi-private space for friends. So it's like where you have conversations, where you share, you talk, you're chilling here. It's kind of like a WhatsApp group message. So this was the place where we could hold more intimate workshops, like a tarot reading for a tech-saturated future or an experimental digital aura reading workshop. And then the last space was the loo, or the bathroom, or the toilet. And this is like the incognito space. It's like the one-to-one messages. And this area was created to mimic our most intimate and private space on the digital world. And above all of these spaces were connected to each other with an imaginary infrastructure, which kind of functioned like a troubleshooting diagram. At the beginning of the space, people were asked, "How did you get here?" And then they were asked simple yes and no questions like, did you use a car or a plane or on the metro? Did you use cash or credit card? So that they can understand the information and the data they shed along the way to get to that point. And at the end, there was a SWOT which allowed them to understand the corresponding future, which most likely collected their data and can be used against them, like emotional and facial recognition systems, political prediction and targeting, website tracking, and recommendation algorithms. And in the end, they could leave their mark, their physical light on the wall with their thumbs for the feature that they want to be stopped in the future. We held many events there. We kind of threw our small festival there, and one of the events was to tape your thumb so you can be more immersed in the content that you are experiencing inside.
And the last project that we'll talk about, we just installed in Berlin, and this is about how we tunnel into your mind, looking at the idea of thinking about thinking. How do we get people to have a deep mental involvement, imagination mapping, and control versus choice? We found that in immersion, in this project, we collaborated with John Dylan Haynes and Dr. Katie Heinrich, and we created a sample world in which conscious agents were able to interact with each other, and they were impacted by each other and their outside environments. So we weren't necessarily creating an immersive environment for them, but we really realized that for humans, we began mapping our thoughts and our experiences onto this experiment and onto this swarm. Push Me Pull You Swarm is made up of 7 individual robots. Each one represents an agent, and in our conversations with the neuroscientist, there was always this mind and body paradox. Where does our consciousness live? Where is the boundary? And so the rocks represent our brain or our matter, and the balloons represent our thoughts or our conscious. And they're connected through space. They move around, and they do get entangled and interact with each other. So we do have a boundary around the arena, and that kind of represents the systems in which we live, the laws of nature, our societies, the borders, and we had fans on the outside, which were our external forces or our socializations, our sensory experiences, recommendation algorithms, social media, the things that affect our thoughts. And so what's really interesting about swarms is they allow for scalability and sociability. They can have potentially an unlimited size. Their control is totally decentralized. And although they have a lack of synchronicity, we're not programming their behaviors, they do have quasi-identical members, and their simple individual behavior can be informed by the interactions of their neighbors. So that means that they're capable of enacting collective goals that can lead to more complex group behavior and self-organizing. Our conversations opened up our minds to think about like the interconnectedness between philosophy, psychology, evolution, neuroscience, and artificial intelligence. And we were really asking the question, do we have free will, and when do we have free will? So we wanted to use the metaphor of the red pill or the blue pill to simulate differences between free will and determinism, using flocking and diffusion algorithms to explore how they manifest with regard to the brain's decisions. And we even added a trap door allowing them to escape. So we saw that people were really trying to embed their own experiences onto the machines and seeing that our thoughts get tangled with each other when we collide. And is this a representation of love?
Consciousness and mediated perception has always been present actors in our narratives. We really like exploring human and non-human ways of existence through our practice, and we like challenging notions of authorship, determinism, and transfer and replication. We admire all the collisions, all the accidents, all the contaminations that happen between art, science, technology, organic and artificial mental states, and also their embodiment. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Let's now welcome from the University of Barcelona, Mel Slater. If you ask anyone who's working with virtual reality, from artists to technologists, even people who develop businesses that involve virtual reality, they all have as a point of reference the work of Mel Slater. He's been researching this field of immersion of virtual reality since the 1990s, so that's a long time. And now I think that the research that he's doing, he sounds so fascinating, like traveling in time. So this theme and others, we are going to know about them through Mel Slater. Hello, Mel. Good morning. Mel. Good morning.
How are you?
How are you? We are not able to hear you. Are you maybe, your computer is muted? We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. Can you unmute yourself in the computer?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. We hear you. Okay. So you can start, Mel.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm sorry that the current circumstances mean that I can't be physically present. So I'm going to talk about some different examples of visiting the past with virtual reality. And I'm going to give 3 examples. First of all, an experiment we did several years ago introduced a time travel illusion. Then a further work we did on taking people back to some parts of the Russian Revolution in 1917. And this was at the anniversary, the 100-year anniversary in 2017. And finally, some current work we're doing on reconstructing rock concerts, and then some conclusions. So the first work is on a time travel illusion. This was actually an experiment we carried out, where in this experiment there were 38 people, and they were divided into 2 groups, and each group only had one type of condition. In the time travel condition, they experienced the scenario, then they could go back in time and re-experience that scenario and see their previous self doing whatever they did the first time, and then intervene to change the future. In the repetition condition, they simply same thing 3 times. So they're 2 quite different experiences. So I'm going to show a video in a minute to how it works, but let me set this up. So first of all, the participant was embodied in a virtual art gallery, and then they were controlling a lift to take visitors to the upper gallery. At one moment, there were 5 people in the upper gallery of the art gallery and 1 person in the lower. And a 7th person entered. Now, what I'm going to show now has a bit violent content, so if you don't want to see that, I suggest you look away or stop listening for a moment. So this is the person. They're embodied, so they're in a virtual body. That's their virtual body. As you can see, they're controlling the lift. This is the 7th person who comes in. And as you can see, there's 5 people upstairs and 1 person downstairs. So as I said, they either repeated the same scenario 3 times or they time traveled to the past. So what's happening now is the one on the left that you see is the one who first experienced this, and the one on the right is the one who's gone back in time and is seeing the actions that he or she did before. And we're going to show 3 examples of where the time traveling allowed participants to change history. So the first one is that they stopped the people going up. When they pressed the alarm button, the lift was stuck and the people couldn't go up. I guess you're hearing this because I can't hear anything.
Perdón, ¿podría subirme al segundo piso, por favor?
So the 5 people have entered already. Now the 7th person comes in. 7th person goes as the first time round up to the first floor. So this is changing history. The character you see on the right near the machine is changing the way things operate. And now he shoots, but there's no one there. The second one is just to prevent the gunman from using the elevator. So the first character does whatever they did before, but this can be overridden by the one who's gone back into the past. So again, you press the alarm, nothing happens. The lift can't be used. The gunman still carries out his actions, but this time there's one victim, the one on the ground floor. And the last one is you just stop the gunman halfway through. So these are different strategies that people realized in order to avoid the disastrous outcome. So they changed the future, in a sense, back in the past. So this time they just trapped the gunman halfway. So what happened in this experiment? Those in the time travel condition did have the illusion of traveling back through time, but this was influenced by their sense of presence, how much they felt to be in the gallery, which was on the whole pretty high, and second, their illusion that that body was their body. Interesting, they were also likely to feel more guilty about the outcome of the events, I guess because in a sense, had more control compared with the people who simply repeated exactly the same thing 3 times. The second thing I want to talk about is the 100th anniversary of the October Revolution in 1917. And we did with BBC research, and we were interested in how virtual reality could be used to put people back in the events of that time, rather than simply read about it or watch documentaries and so on. How does an immersive experience change what their outcome might be? So it's related with the BBC mission to inform, educate, entertain. So it starts from a very famous picture that was taken actually in 1920, and this is Lenin giving a speech to Red Army recruits during the Civil War, and standing to his left by the side of the platform is Leon Trotsky, who was the leader of the Red Army at the time. And we carried out a study with 3 groups of people. One, they were embodied, they actually experienced being Lenin. The second, they became part of the crowd. And the third, they simply observed from a third-person perspective what was going on. So we reproduced this scenario. First of all, we put people through an embodiment experience where they're standing in front of a mirror, and Leon Trotsky is telling Lenin different postures to take. This is just to get people used to the fact that this is their body and how it would move with their movements.
Great.
And so on.
You are impressive.
Give this illusion of body ownership. And then there were 3 different kinds of conditions. This is someone standing in the crowd. We reproduced Sverdlov Square, where this actually happened at the time. You can see that there's a reasonably faithful reproduction of what's in the photograph. To me, what's happening on the screen looks very jerky. I hope it's not the same for you. So Lenin giving his speech. You're part of the crowd. in another condition, I don't know what's happened, but we've missed most of the video. I don't know, the video has been cut, so I don't know if I have time. Can the video, please? Yeah, I can move the video forward.
We have 5 minutes and a half, so maybe you have time.
Yes. So this is in the crowd. I'm trying to move the video forward. Happened is somehow the video has been changed. So yes. So now you are Lenin. Let me wind it back a bit. You are Lenin giving the speech. That's working. So this, and then you see the audience reactions, and or maybe it's just it happened, but I didn't see it because there's a big lag on what I'm seeing. So what we found is that the embodied, the lag here is quite strong. The embodied participants were more likely to have greater illusion of presence, being in the place, and that the events were really happening, the stronger the body ownership. And most important, if they had that embodied condition, they were much more likely to follow up information about the illusion in the 3 weeks following their experience. The last one I want to show is this one. So this started a few years ago when I saw this video by chance on YouTube, and I wished I'd have been at the concert, but obviously I couldn't. It happened in 1983. So I thought, but I do virtual reality, I can recreate the concert. So we're doing, it's a platform for the study of re-immersing older people in their past, and evidence suggests that this is beneficial. And there's various other things that we'll be studying scientifically. So we're in early days at the moment. This is how it currently looks. I'll just show a little part of this. Again, I can't really see what you're seeing because it's really jerky. So there's a massive audience, the band plays and so on. So my conclusions are, we did an experiment where the crowd around you was very prominent in your reactions. So virtual reality generates powerful illusions, being there, events are really happening, the virtual body is my body. We can also simulate time travel and take us back to events in the past. And when you're feeling low, you can do amazing things to improve your mood. And I'll finish there.
Mel, I think that we are running out of time. And
yes.
We need to
just
close
stop
the session.
It whenever you want. Yes.
Thank you very much for participating in this edition of Sónar+D. Mel, Etxe, Carmen, and also Xavi. Apparently, we have run out of time and we don't have any time for questions. Maybe you can take Xavi, who is here in person, and you can make some questions outside. And for you that you are watching, I'm sorry that if you had any doubts, we haven't been able to respond them this time. Thank you very much.